Miss Evelyn Perez-Verdia, welcome to the Be Smart podcast. It is my absolute pleasure, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time today to give us what's going to be an awesome discussion and great tips for our fellow business owners, our members, and also this will be released out to the public as well. So I think all of America hopefully will be listening to you and listening to all the great information that you have. So thank you very much and welcome to the podcast.
No, thank you, Gil. It's always a pleasure. I highly respect your work and esteem what you do in terms not only of your business, but always there for the community. So thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's a pleasure. And I just want to tell everybody who's watching, Evelyn and I go way back. When I was a young professional, or we were young professionals, I think we're considered probably on the older end of the spectrum now. But
Correct.
we met each other back in 2004, 2005, so almost
20
20.
years ago.
I know, crazy, right? So
20 years ago.
and a lot has changed for us, always in good ways. You have a beautiful family, and now you're in South Florida, and I'm still here in Tampa. But so everybody who's listening, Evelyn is just a phenomenal individual, and very excited to have her here today. And I'm going to tee it off. Not everybody obviously knows you like I do, so I'm going to read a little bit about your background, and then we're going to dive in as we do in the other podcasts. Probably spend the first, half of the podcast getting to know you as a female entrepreneur and leader and how you perfected your craft to where you are today. And then the best part of it is really giving those tips and just some great advice for business owners and how they can utilize public relations to their benefit, no matter what type of business they are in. Okay. So I'm going to start. Ms. Evelyn Perez-Verdia is a president and chief strategy officer of We Are Mouse, a South Florida-based social impact agency specializing in public relations and earned paid media. With over 20 years of experience, Evelyn has advised numerous small businesses, companies, educational institutions, and nonprofits on how to craft engaging narratives and manage their reputation through accurate messaging and rapid messaging, especially during crisis. Her insights on creative and culturally competent messaging and community engagement have been featured in over 100 media outlets worldwide. She also trains public figures in effective speaking. That's what I'm going to need from you. And media communication. In 2024, Evelyn was invited to be a visiting fellow at Brown University School of Public Health as part of the Ivy League's Information Futures Lab. Impressive, and I'm very blessed to know you as a person. And again, thank you. So we're gonna dive right in, Miss Evelyn. So one of the things that fascinate me about what I do as a business attorney and also in litigation, but mainly about business law, which is something I got into so early on, is really knowing the story behind the entrepreneur and the business owner. And we're all fascinated by how they end up there. And so I'm definitely going to dive in with you. And let's start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to be both biculturally from, I'll let you start, and then we're going to take it from there. But please walk us through the beginning parts of Evelyn's story.
Well, thank you, Gil. It's a pleasure. I believe that we have in common that we have we have beautiful families when we continue to do the work. And really, it's like a full circle being here with you, right? Being here with you. And especially also full disclaimer, you as now we're a mass attorney, we're very grateful for you and the support you give us in terms of contracts and different things that you're doing for us that has been really helpful for us to grow. So let's start there. But I think what's fascinating, I was just realizing that you grew up also like in the Appalachia area when you first arrived. And it's
Yes.
fascinating because my dad's from Louisville, Kentucky, right? So
Mhm.
my dad grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. He came down to Florida. My mother, we both have in common that we both have Colombian heritage. My mother was Colombian, and she arrived to Tampa to take care of some kids, met my father, and one of the biggest passions that my family had was to help deaf communities and impaired communities because my grandmother on my father's side was deaf. So my dad and mom left to Colombia in the 70s when they were in their early 20s with some very
Wow.
small children. And my dad was one of the first Americans to go to Colombia to find deaf communities in a country in that time. Thankfully, it's not like this now, but in that time, they were hidden because there was not we didn't have the information or the education at that time for them to understand that many were just born hearing impaired, but they had a lot of aptitudes. Here in the United States, we have, for example, Gadget University, which is a university of deaf and hearing impaired community that are doctors, attorneys. So I feel very proud to know that my parents went across Colombia looking for these deaf communities and asking these parents to bring them to them. For one point, they had around 80 children in their foundation. They had 80 children in the mission that they were taking care of, that they were teaching sign language. My mom, actually, when she recently passed away in 2023, it was beautiful because a lot of the translators were went and they said that my mom was the first to make the sign of, like, let's say Colombia. Colombia is a C, and this is a flag, and my mom made the sign Colombia.
Oh, wow.
So that was something that some translators came up to me, interpreters, and they were like, we highly esteem your mom for the work she did, but they also were, missionaries. So
Mm.
they went on Sundays and you know, they helped the deaf communities, like gave them food. We did a camp every year for marginalized communities and took them to like a place like in Chinauta, with the pool and the hot weather. And where a lot of these families, this was like the first time they had 3 meals a day. So I
Wow.
grew up with that background. And when I arrived to Tampa, around the time that you and I met, I was in a situation where I was very different because of that background and that upbringing. So I didn't understand, and this is something that I feel very proud of to the day, is that a lot of people are transactional. A lot of people in business are transactional. And that's, sometimes how people handle things. But for us, what we like to do and what we like to work in terms of public relations is to make sure that it's truthful, but also that it's transformational and not transactional. That it actually creates change in terms of what you do and in terms of the public relations you give.
Wow.
So,
No,
so
thank you for sharing that. It definitely makes sense as to where you are now and what you do, and that you grew up in this environment of advocacy for those who need that voice. And wow, that makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. And when you came to Tampa, um, you I believe you went to USF, correct?
yes,
That's
yes,
how you landed here. But
yes.
before that, in high school, were you in Colombia in high school, or was it here in the stateside?
So that's what's, interesting. I call myself a hybrid because, I grew up back and forth. I went back and forth from
Mm,
Colombia, but always Tampa Bay was my center spot
okay.
where we come back. So my family, we would go like, 2 years to Colombia, come back for 2 years like that.
Wow.
Often. But one thing that happened is, for example, when I was very small, like between the age of 0 to 3, we were living in Colombia, and the government had given some land to our family, which they ended up calling Silent City because of the deaf community, which was
Oh,
close to
wow.
the Amazons. And we lived there for a while. But this was the times, as you well know, of the guerrilla groups, and we were informed that they were planning to kidnap my father. So we had to leave. Then we were in the United States, and around 7 years old, my mom went back to help the foundation, and they had enlisted me, I think around the age of 6, to Little Miss Florida because I had long blonde hair, and they're like, Little Miss Florida, Evelyn, is going to be part of Little Miss Florida. But I really wanted to go back to Colombia. So
Oh,
my
wow.
dad, and there's actually an article about this in WLRN, but my dad said, okay, if you want to go to Colombia with your mom, you're going to have to cut your hair. You have to dye it brown so you don't stand out. So there's actually a picture of me with brown hair, short, so I wouldn't stand out when I was in Colombia and I wouldn't get easily kidnapped. So I think that all of those experiences were back and forth between Tampa and Colombia, but we always had this center here. And I think that was really important because I saw the growth, for example, of the Hispanic community. I don't know if you remember, Gil, but before there was only one restaurant. It was you had to go to Miami, and it was called Monserrate. And
Mhm.
everyone was excited because you could get a bonbon or a fruna, which are these candies from Colombia, for those who do not know, that are very specific to Colombia and very nostalgic. So now you see, for example, Tampa Bay, tons of Colombian restaurants all over. Here in the city I live in, there's 4 Colombian restaurants. So you see how not only, companies grow, but the fact that we have this cultural competency of seeing how it grew is super important in terms of the work and the engagement that companies do with the populations.
Yeah, and very unique experience that you had growing up and having that back and forth between both countries, very different in many respects. I've shared part of my story where when I was born in West Virginia, and then at 12, my father then and my mom immigrated back to Colombia because he had a massive stroke, so he had to a forced retirement, and so at 12 they brought me to Colombia. So for me, it was very much a culture shock at 12, being
Mm.
here since I was 12, and then going to Colombia in a small town, and then being there for 4 years, and then coming back. And that was just like a one-way thing. And to me, it was shocking at the beginning for many, on many angles, both from just getting used to a different culture, language, learning how to read and write. But then, kind of towards the end of my time there, really finally growing a passion for the culture and really becoming a part of it. And then they sent me back to Sarasota. So those formative years
Formative years.
really impacted how I view the world, and to this day on how I, for example, run the firm, or
Hmm.
how I
Hmm.
talk to clients from different parts of the world. And
Hmm.
so I see a lot of parallels with you as well. And we're going to get into some of
Okay.
those things as well in terms of how I can see now tying in that experience that you've had, and then bringing it into now to help business owners and governments. And it's complicated. What you do is hard. I mean, to understand the interplay between for-profit, nonprofit, those who are in need, how to get the message out. I mean, those things are very complicated, and it
Yeah.
really does take a very unique background and experience. You're either going to live it yourself, which that's you, or you're going to live it through somebody else, which is just shadowing somebody who's been doing it. So the people that you probably are, mentoring are learning from you. So very fascinating. So once you get to USF, it sounds like you have about 4 years or so of some stability in that you're kind of in one place, perhaps. And how what did you do during college, during your USF years, that may have reflected some of your prior experience, or not? Walk us through a little bit about that.
So I went, just as a running rapid summary. In Colombia, I was at an American high school missionary school, which
Oh.
was a combination of missionary kids with a combination of diplomatic
Hmm.
kids that weren't accepted to the nicer school because of their grades. So we had a very different mix of individuals that were from missionary kids to like petroleum kids to kids that were children of diplomats.
Mm,
So it was very interesting because when we left the school, we were often going to their homes, understanding how those arenas fit in, and it was really fascinating because I ended up, going to USF. First, I went to community college at St. Petersburg College for my first 2 years. And then the last 2 years, I studied international studies. And I
mm,
think it was that background
mhm,
of how I grew up that made me say, this is interesting. I really enjoy this. In that time, we were, since we were missionaries, I paid for my own college. I was under the poverty level. I was in the work study program, and I had a wonderful mentor who guided me, who taught me how to make souffle, who invited me to her house, who taught me how to place a table. I mean, just things. And I think that that's a big message. I think that you and I know how important it is to pay it forward for
mhm.
the young professionals out there seeing this, or this, even people who are in small business. It's always important to mentor and pay it forward because, and also for those who are, you know, mentors take their time to do it. I think it's really important that they understand how important it is to also pay it forward in the future because not everyone does, right? And if
Yeah,
it's like if we're giving you a gift, the only the only exchange that should be there is that you're going to give the gift to others, right? Like that's the commitment.
that's right.
So yes, so I went to USF, and I started just connecting. I ended up in this legislative internship program where I
Mm,
was working for a state rep. I ended up working for a congressman after various jobs where I was working in the, communities, the migrant communities, and I learned a lot about, focus groups there. And I find it fascinating because it doesn't matter what you do, everything that you do, no matter what, I worked at State Farm for like 6 months answering phones.
I didn't know
And
that.
and that was right after I was a campaign manager for a little bit for that state rep. And you're like in your early 20s and you think you're going to be the next president of the United States or some governor or something. And you're like, okay. And you end up realizing it's not going to happen.
Yep, I
Later on.
identify.
But you have that dream. And so when this man from State Farm is like, "Oh, you're really smart, you if you need a job at State Farm," I'm like, "Me? No, I'm not gonna be at State Farm." But you learn humility. You learn
Mm,
humility. And I had a lot of lessons of humility, and realizing that just as you go up, you can go down. Just as this person is your boss, maybe one day you'll be theirs, or just as that person that worked under you will maybe be in a very big position. So it's that like level of respect too in terms of the work you do.
absolutely. And, one of the things that you and I hit it off so well. So, right at the beginning when we met, obviously because of our background, both having both the US and Colombia being a part of our lives at such a young age, but also our affinity towards politics was also something that I was very passionate about at that age. And you shared that same passion as well. And I saw that. And, you were I talked about it. You actually went out there and did it, and that was something that I always admired, and definitely represented the young professionals very well, and also represented those of Hispanic background and female. So definitely something that we all admired from your work. And one of the great things is that early on you became an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
So that was, I remember, very, very early on. And I want to talk about your jump now to being an entrepreneur because you've been a business owner ever since. And
Yeah,
that's probably
yeah.
been over 15 plus
Since
years at this point.
2007. Since 2007, what happened was another balloon being, desinflado, like they say in Spanish, like losing its air. was, when my boss, who was a congressman in Tampa, Congressman Davis, ran for governor. Um,
Mm,
and I had worked for him almost 3 years
right.
as a congressional assistant and a federal caseworker, which I love my job because one of the things I was able to do, and I think that it goes down to why I do what I do now, is that due to my personal story with my family, that we were US citizens, and often because of being in a marginalized community with I remember going to like not knowing like for dental work, not having the money to do so, if I got sick, finding someone to help us. And I realized that, we didn't know how the system worked. We didn't know how government worked. We didn't know how to create a small business. We didn't know a lot of things, and we were US citizens. And for me, that was something that when I worked for the congressman, I was like, wow, there are all these services that are given to constituents to help them know if their immigration case is okay, if they're a veteran, because it's like last result, right, of what needs to be done.
Yep.
And so I would go on my free time and I would be like going and educating communities, which is how I met you, and just kind of being like, and it was not like I wasn't getting paid for it. It was a very prestigious job and I really appreciated, but it was really paycheck to paycheck. But I really took the time because I knew it was important. So, we've gone through all these facets from like, I also got involved in politics, but then I realized like oftentimes, like, what are they really doing for our communities? It doesn't matter the political ideology, but what are they truly doing? Are they being authentic? And finally, with all those factors, I finally said, my focus is ensuring that the people we work with are accurately informing the communities with the goal they have in mind and doing it correctly, doing it with transparency, honesty, and building a reputation, which is part of public relations, building a reputation around that company or that firm or that individual built on trust, which is not something that's done from morning to night. It takes time and it takes a monthly work of training the individual, training them to how to speak, but also training them to actually go out there and not only, bring clients in, but what are they doing also to support communities with the work that they do.
Yes. And you mentioned something really important. I want to highlight this because I didn't realize this until I did an internship with Senator Graham in DC for it was the summer of '98, and so I was assigned to the domestic cluster, and so one of my responsibilities was to answer to constituent mail. And when
Mhm.
I got there, and they're telling me, oh, you're going to review constituent mail that is within this part of the domestic cluster. One of them actually being bankruptcy. You're going to read it, and then you're going to find like the letter that answers the question. And if you can't find the answer, then talk to like your supervisor, or if not, you'll go to like the congressional research something that you would remember that you would give them the info, and you had the
Fun
nerd
job,
underneath.
Gail. Fun job.
Yeah, those were the true AI agents that would give you the info, and then those little yellow
Yeah.
packets, remember?
Yes. Yes.
So, and that was fascinating to me that you didn't realize, and I was at that point in my degree was in political science,
Mhm.
and but they didn't really go into that until finally, like you mentioned. I mean, you're doing real field work. I mean, people are calling in to either the congressman or the senator, depending on who's representing you, and they actually have to like do some work, and that there's individuals that are in the office and the staff that are specifically assigned to help. So that's a I don't think enough people in the public realize that that's one of the big parts of these elected officials and their responsibilities.
Yeah,
So
and what I love about it is it doesn't matter who you are, as long as you're a constituent.
mhm.
Doesn't matter your political affiliation. It's a service that's paid by our taxpayer dollars. And I think one of the best two moments that I loved about working for the congressman was one of a veteran I helped. And he came back and he gave me this ring that he had made with a dollar bill. And it was and my dad was in the Navy, so for me that was special. And he said, I had to come back and bring you this ring that I made out of a dollar bill. And I said, wow. I said, thank you so much. And he goes, because I don't want you ever to forget that you're number one.
Oh, wow.
So it's
That's
like it's
touching.
just like, and it's nice to see, like, you learn that in terms, like, yes, public relations, like, now we are mass, before, when I started in 2007, it was under another name, which was transnational relations.
That's
But
right. I
then
remember.
transnational crime started like appearing, and I started not liking the word transnational that much. So I was like, no, mejor no, like that's not good branding. But then it was more than that. And what we built out since 2021 with a new name is We Are Más.
Mhm.
And We Are Más, which I love, is because it means that we're more together, right? So it's not just about, do a lot of collaborations, but also when our clients come to us, it's not like we say, okay, well, this is our group and this is what we have to offer, but they say, this is what I need. And then we build the team to work specifically on their project with the best for what their needs are. And I think that that's super important because there are so many individuals, consultants, leaders, experts that we work with, and it's just nice because you see that the results work. You see that
Yes.
you get better, that there's trust in it. I have so many examples of things that we've done that have built the trust, where now these companies are receiving awards
Mm.
because of having a background of saying, oh, this is how we saw them, and there was zero trustworthiness in them, and then changing that 180 degrees, and having them actually being like a top national company or organization now, that
Wow.
everyone's looking up to.
Well, and so yeah, let's get into these tips. But the first question out of the gate, and I'd like you to address this, which it took me a while early on in my career to figure out, like, well, what exactly is public relations? How does that relate to like marketing? Is it part? It's not advertising maybe because you don't pay for it. Like, it took me a while to finally like sort it out. So let's just start there so then we can walk down our audience through what it is
Sure.
and how important it is for any type of business, and then getting into really specific tips and action items for our audience. So let's start with the first one. What is public relations?
Okay, so let's start first with the name of what We Are Más is, right? We Are Más is a social impact agency that's focused on public relations and also that does advertisement. So public
Okay.
service announcements, from infographics to creating production for like a engagement campaign, digital, all of these pieces. So public relations, really the focus of public relations is earned media, press releases, building the reputation of a company, also crisis management. So
Mm.
usually a PR firm is placed on retainer, and we not only focus on, okay, this is what you're doing. How do we improve you? Let's improve your speaking skills. Let's get you some training. Who are your leadership people who are going to be speaking to the media if it happens? And then also in that PR piece, which is a big piece, which I'm very proud to say, I'm actually, this is the first time I say this, but we're working with a very important crisis communications agency that we're going to do
Oh,
some work with in
excellent.
Miami. That's very well recognized. So we're doing some projects there that I will tell you later about. But really,
Congratulations.
what it comes down to is that you have to build that trust. You have to build it around PR, but you also have to do it, long term. And especially now with AI, with deep fakes, where, I don't know, Gil, you could be, talking to me and then like we'll find you on WhatsApp selling some perfumes because in Tampa to your clients because they know you because they took a deep fake of you and they're trying to, use you for fraudulent reasons, right?
Mm,
And these are the things that we're literally dealing with, not only for large CEOs, but also small businesses, because you, as your small business, become a circle of trust for the clients you serve, right? So PR is really just being constantly there with you, but also what we do is like, for example, in PR, we do simulations. Okay, what if this were to happen to you? How would your response be? And one of the biggest things that, as you very well know, is that if you're silent for too long, no
mm.
bueno, right? It's
Yep.
not good. If you're silent too long, perception is reality. It means you have something to hide. So we also prepare companies, we prepare clients of, okay, if something happens, you need to have maybe a written message by this amount of time. You have to have a press conference by this amount of time, or depending what the situation is, we manage it different ways because now we have social media platforms, press releases. For example, a tip, a lot of people, the written press release is kind of less now than a visual press release
Mm.
where you're actually giving the information out versus writing it, or you do both. So there's different things now that are more modern versus in public relations.
And
Now, advertising.
yeah, and so I wanted to interject this part because a big catchphrase is, for example, to become an industry expert. For example, to be known in your particular craft. So whether you own an HVAC company or a construction company or a firm or whatever it is, you can always position yourself. Um, if obviously you have the experience, but as an industry expert. And so, would you say that utilizing public relations to put that out there is one of the ways, to do that?
Well, yes, and that's when we can go to, advertising,
Mm,
because it has to be both, really. Because the public relations is building the trust, is constantly the community engagement, is going to the events, it's being there, it's doing the networking, it's, having conversations with community leaders, it's having conversations with media, talking about it. But the paid is very important too,
mm,
because you need that advertising in the local newspaper. You need it, if you have the bilingual skills, fortifying that, because it's like, when we look at these large companies, para español presione uno, for English press two, or for the vice versa. You realize that these large companies understand that they're doing this because they're saying, you matter enough for me to translate this for you, right? You matter enough that I'm going to give this in your language because that's going to make you stay longer with me as a client because you're going to understand fully what I'm saying to you and you will stay. So, with agencies, with advertisement, we always do a mixture of, earned, of building the reputation, but also, for example, we recently, a new client we have, we did an infographic for him, and
mm,
because he saw an infographic we did for one of our other clients that expresses all this information in very simple form with an infographic versus writing it out and everything, which is something that's being used now, for example. And he's like, "Oh, I love this. Let's build it out." And he's like, let's just take, and I said, no, it's not just building something out. When we do an infographic for an ad for a paper, it's not just building it out. What we think is important is understanding what the client needs and wants. It's understanding what their market and their demographics are looking for. And it's also understanding what their competitors are doing and what makes them different,
mm.
right? So it's not just building an infographic, it's a really intentional analysis of what you're giving to people for it to reach them because it's authentic and sincere. So both are
Got it.
needed.
Both are needed. And to put it see if you agree with this or not. Feel free to disagree. But
Okay.
on a monetary level, there's an understanding that advertising, for example, you're gonna pay for either the TV, the radio, or if you're gonna put money into social or put an ad in the paper, like that would be more of the traditional advertising where you're paying. From a public relations standpoint, not so much, unless of course you're gonna hire a public relations firm to handle it. But in terms of that part of it, it's not necessarily the paying, for example, a newspaper to, for example, put out a press release that you just did. So can you kind of clarify that, make sure we're on the same
Yes, I
page?
mean, with earned media, with the PR piece, usually you go and you engage with them and you say, "Hey, this is an important story. We think you should cover it because, this client is the first time they're presenting this great product. It's going to be life-changing for many people. You pitch it to certain media groups that are interested in that specific niche, right? That specific
Mhm.
type of uh, uh,
And let me ask you, let me interrupt you on that because that's very important what you just said. And would you agree that there are reporters that handle different subject matters.
correct.
It's not just what we see on TV that maybe they're just talking about all the time about crime and this or that. No, there are specific journalists or reporters that handle different areas: business, finance, economy, politics, whatever it may be. So, would you agree with that?
Of course, there's small business journalists. There are journalists that focus on small businesses. There are journalists that focus on community engagement. There are journalists that focus on general affair issues. So it's really like it's not only, and that's one of the things that, I think that what makes, in terms of the top issue at mind for small businesses and companies of in terms of public relations and advertising in Florida. And
Mm.
I think it's something that thankfully you and I have is being bilingual and culturally competent because it's very difficult to navigate the waters of Florida when we have such diverse communities that involve diaspora communities. Many are US citizens, right, that are registered to vote, that have their small businesses, but being able to navigate that cultural competency is very important. But I do agree with you with what you said. Yes, absolutely.
That's great. And when I realized, I didn't know that until years ago, that I was like, wow, you've got these niche reporters. So, there are reporters out there who will probably be reporting on, on construction projects or an HVAC projects or whatever it may be. They're out there. And so I found that now for the firm, we have I guess, I don't know if it sounds right, but we have kind of the advantage that in what I do, we have very interesting stories. So they're very, reporters really jump on those stories, and I won't get
Right.
into it, but I have some pretty crazy. I learned about public relations pretty quickly very early on in my career from a legal standpoint, and then I realized so many things and how eye-opening it is, and in reality, and why I was so excited about today is that starting to understand what public relations is and how you can utilize that for your business, how powerful that can be. No matter what business you have or what professional background or what your life story is, but it is a very important aspect of owning a business. So
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that that's when we could go in, like part of the title that you brought to this is, power play, command attention. You talk about commanding attention, which is a piece. So I want to give like maybe, I don't know, how much time do we have, Gil? I have
we have about 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes. So I'm going to give, if we can, just a couple of things in terms of command attention of
Yes.
what should be done. These are tips for your clients that I think are going to be really important. We talked about the importance of building trust. So the public relations piece is not just, hey, I'm here, and you just appear and pop up and be like, I'm here, and you get PR. You have to build the trust for a long time. And the trust is not only built by a good story, But, like oftentimes you've done, you've been in the community. Recently, for example, we had a client who needed us to, for a conference, buy some tech equipment for them. And it was like, buy us a tech. We have no idea how we're going to send it back, but buy some tech equipment for us. And I said to them, I said, look, do me a favor. Why don't we do this? I can get a nonprofit from this area to lend us the equipment. Okay. So instead of you buying it, give them a donation and we'll both feel good about it. Right.
Mm,
So also, okay, I'm going to have a party. Okay, I'm going to have a party. We're going to have a huge party and we're the 5 years of our company. Okay, awesome. Have a party. But okay, let's focus on what are you going to do to like, let's build something out that helps somebody. And
mhm.
that can be a story that's authentic, that actually someone is gaining something from your success. That's another thing. So that's
That's
kind of
huge.
like that proactive of how do I get to the story? But it has to be authentic. Don't help the kid just because you're going to get a story. It's like
Yeah.
do it because you care. Because at the end of the day, and this is from that background with my family as missionary kids, do it for the right reasons and the rest will come, right? Um, Also, the other thing with commanding attention, it's important to have culturally competent experts like we are,
Mm,
because a lot of people fear. We don't know the language. We don't know what's being said. I don't know if what I'm sending to this advertisement is right or wrong. So you have to have people who you can trust to ensure that what you're giving them is 100% accurate. We've been in situations, one of our biggest clients, where they were in a crisis of a front page
mm,
situation. And they called us, and I knew they were going to call us because we had a really good relationship with the people there. And they said, and they called us and they said, well, you know why I'm calling? I said, yes, I do. I said, and they said, well, we want to work with you. I said, before we start working, let's fix the crisis. And
mm,
I said, do this, 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 and then we'll talk about the rest. But let's fix this first. Let's make sure that your reputation does not or is not destroyed by this.
mm.
And then we've been working for 3 years together. So it's like, those are the type of things and that's why you have a crisis ready team. A lot of people are like, well, I can't afford public relations. I can't afford advertisement. And what I have to say is there's always a way. It's important to say, okay, this is the budget. Because now, like a lot of people, that's part of the issue. A lot of people say, oh, you have to just be on TV and it's super expensive.
Mhm.
But there are different ways that, and not that TV is not important. I believe in all, if you can be in all of them, be in all of them. Pero there's like the digital, which is less expensive and where you're reaching people on this.
Yep.
And we're all on this right now, 100 times a day, checking our emails, checking our social media.
Oh yeah.
So one of the things that we say at We Are Más is do not wait for your communities to find you. Let us
Mhm.
help you go to them. Let us help you find them where they're at versus where you think they're at?
And
That's
one
so
other
that.
thing I
Mhm.
wanted to add this in there. Maybe you have it there. Is the speaking component? A lot of people are very scared. I think it's like one of the second biggest phobias is speaking in public. But how do you approach that, and what are some actionable tips that you can give for those who don't feel comfortable or want to, for example, enhance their ability to communicate?
Well, one is very simple is enter through a sense of humility, in terms of communications. I've been grateful to train public figures, to see spokespeople that I've trained be taken to other places because they were so good, but then they came back to the work we were doing. And so that feels good because you see them change. But I think it really is just practice. It's really sitting down. It's understanding what to wear depending on where you are. It's understanding how to sit. It's understanding how to speak. Sometimes you see someone that's extremely smart and they're standing there in an interview and they're like grabbing their arm like this and talking at the same time. And like, well, we think of, and this is kind of like protecting themselves. This is a
Mhm.
visual you're giving. I'm protecting myself from what you're saying versus speaking,
Yeah.
talking to people. And in Latin America, for example, with Latinos, we have to talk a lot like this. We have to say our hands and important, but in the United States a lot sometimes we don't speak with our hands.
Mhm.
So it's just different things, but that's why it's so important is just understanding how to do these things, understanding how to take the message. What are your three messages? What is it? There was with Winston Churchill, I believe. I hope I say this correctly in his quote because I'm just thinking of it from here, but um he would go to the meeting, he would say, "Would do you have any questions to my answers?" You
I love that.
know?
That's awesome.
It kind of just says to people, and that's something I learned from you got to give credit where credit's due. I learned that from a consultant in DC who reminded me of that. And that's things that we learn from others, but really it's like, what no matter what they ask me, yes, answer, like, in a way. If you don't know, say you don't know, that you'll get back to them. But finally you also have to say, what is it that I want people to know, and how can I deliver it so that they understand how important it is. So those are the things that we practice and do with clients.
Awesome. Well, look, I appreciate your time today. Time flies, like I told you. We're
I,
already bumping up
this is when you're having fun, Gil. This is
here.
fun.
That's right. That's right. Going in the hour. I appreciate your time. Great information. I couldn't recommend anybody more than Evelyn and her organization. We Are Mas. We're very blessed to be your attorneys. We're blessed to have you as a client, a B Law member as well from the very beginning. You were actually one of my first clients ever because I started the firm back in January of 2007, and
Oh
then
my
you
gosh,
started your company in '07. I remember I was a part of, helping you form your entity back then. So actually, you're one of my first clients ever. So I
that's
appreciate it.
awesome. Full
Not only do I,
circle, Gil.
and
Awesome.
hopefully we'll have another 20 or 30 years more. Thank you for your time. Everybody who's out there watching, please give her a call. We'll have all of the information here as well. If you could give us your website, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. It's wearemasfl.com, and you can reach me directly at Evelyn at wearemasfl.com, and I will speak directly to you.
Great. Thank you so much. And now I want to announce next month's topic. And our guest speaker is a gentleman by the name of Felipe Ramirez. He is a high level wealth consultant with Bank of America. And he will be addressing very important topics on how to manage our money. So, business owners are great at making money. Sometimes they're not so great at managing their money once they have it on the other side in their account. So he's going to walk us through all of the different financial strategies that all business owners should be aware of and looking at in order to protect and increase the hard work that they put into those dollars. So thank you very much, Evelyn. God bless you and your family. Please tell your husband I say hello. Big
Likewise,
hugs to
likewise,
him.
Gil. Hugs to your wife and kids.
Thank you
Thank
so much. God bless you. Take care.
Likewise. Bye bye.
Bye bye.